To discuss all that and more, Ariel Scarcella is an influential trans-exclusionary lesbian vlogger and a prolific producer of humorous educational videos. You'd need to be, which deal with facets of lesbian life, love and sexuality. Fans of Outsiders will remember, of course, that Ariella was here in the studio with us back in February when she was here for the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, but she was cancelled. Yes, cancelled, a victim of cancel culture. Why? Because as a lesbian, well, I'll let her explain, but she's not interested in trans women, in other words, former men who now, whatever. So, therefore, she gets labelled a TERF and is cast out from the supposedly tolerant LBGT blah, blah, blah crowd. Ariella teamed up recently with Gina Florio, who runs the Blexit Foundation. Blexit means Black Exit. It's the program that we have talked about here on Outsiders before that was set up by American conservative Candice Owens to persuade African Americans to quit, to Blexit, the Democrat Party, and leave behind the ingrained victimhood culture and instead discover a better, brighter, more conservative and values-based future. Importantly, Blexit is hypercritical of the Black Lives Matter movement. So, what do a cancelled trans-exclusionary lesbian and a Blexit organiser have in common? Well, apart from being absolutely natural outsiders, they share rational, critical thought and reason. Ariella, welcome back to Outsiders, and Gina, welcome to Outsiders. How are you both?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you for having us.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you both here. So we're going to start off, Gina, if you wouldn't mind just explaining. I tried to explain Blexit, but you run it. You tell us what Blexit is all about and how it differs from Black Lives Matter.
Sure. So as you said, Blexit is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization that was founded by Candice Owens and Brandon Tatum. And the whole premise is that is encouraging Black Americans to really think for themselves and to not be owned by the Democratic Party, to not be owned by the left, and to really break free from this victim narrative and to really embrace the American dream and embrace everything that the United States has to offer. And so we are really encouraging people to leave behind the lunacy of the left. We have 12 chapters across the country that are always on the ground, helping Black families and students and helping Black communities thrive. We're providing after-school education for students. We're providing school supplies so they can continue learning at home, doing food drives and community events for the elderly, helping people create resumes and get jobs. So we're really on the ground every day, really trying to help Black America do better.
Now, before I come to Ariella, just tell us what the issues you've had with Black Lives Matter, and tell us in particular about those African Americans who have talked to you and have kind of tried to advocate for Black Lives Matter and not been interested in Blexit. Tell us that interesting dilemma there.
Yeah, well, Black Lives Matter and their supporters actually look at Blexit, they look at Candice, they look at Brandon, and they call them race traitors. And they call us secret white supremacists who want to eliminate the Black population from America. It really is, it's an ironic thing because this is what we say, Blexit is all about action. Blexit is all about being on the ground, actually helping Black America. But the thing about Black Lives Matter as an organization is that instead of actually helping rebuild Black America, they are wreaking havoc in Black communities. I mean, we have seen so many Black businesses be burned to the ground. We've seen people's lives be ruined. We've seen people killed in the streets. For example, Officer David Dorn was just slaughtered in the streets by violent protesters and rioters. And so when Black Lives Matter comes after Blexit and they accuse us of being some sort of white supremacist Trump organization, I mean, we really have to laugh because the proof is in the pudding. It's all out there. We've seen the destruction that Black Lives Matter does to Black communities, and we are really doing the opposite of that.
Now, Ariella, you were here in the studio with us. It was great to see you in February. You were cancelled for speaking up against the trans movement. You were a victim of cancel culture, Ariella, but you were here on Outsiders naturally. Now, you've spotted, and you and Gina did a terrific video, which people will find on YouTube, which is great, but where you looked at, Ariella, the comparison between Black Lives Matter and the militant trans movement. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Just know the trans activism, it's not even necessarily trans people, it's the people that are getting behind the movement,
yes,
of the trans community, and far left and progressive LGBT people. And once I saw that there was so many similarities between the two, it was a red flag for me. And I knew I had to do right by the Black community to speak out against Black Lives Matter as an organization.
So tell us what those comparisons were in your mind.
It was the victimhood. We said that in the video. They were always propping themselves up as victims, using each other, people as martyrs, whoever was, killed, or like Marsha P. Johnson, let's say, back in the day in Stonewall, she was propped up as this person that, changed the world. And now, whoever who had died in one of the Black Lives Matter, let's say, protests or something, they would prop that person up as well. And a lot of these people that they were using as, what Gina and I said as martyrs, they weren't really even good people. So it was interesting. It was very interesting. It was very interesting intersection between the two. And I found Candice and her videos a while ago, and then I found Gina through Candice, of course. And I was like, I'm coming to DC. We need to film about this because this is really important, because I see too many similarities. They're using the same tactics, manipulation, and we need to put a stop to this because it's going to get worse and worse. It's going to continue.
Rita.
Now, Ariel, I want to ask you about being called a bigot or trans exclusionary for having a preference for female bodies, traditional female bodies, because now we have got to the situation where some trans activists say that if you're a lesbian and you won't date women who identify as women but still have a penis, then you are a bigot. You should date women even though as a lesbian you would prefer to be with someone without a penis. I mean, how do you tackle that argument?
Yeah, I think the best way of tackling that argument is in the wording that you yourself just used. You said preference. I tell them my sexual orientation is not a preference. That's the whole point. It's not something that I can just, I don't prefer it. It's something I can't help. I was born this way. And I can't help that if I see any male parts, any maleness, it's an automatic turnoff for me. I can't help that. Contrary to what people think about me, I'm not trans exclusionary in my work, just in my dating life. And that's a private thing. People shouldn't have a say in that. You know what I mean? It goes without saying.
But people do have a say now. People say if you are saying that you're only going to date other lesbians who don't have a penis, then you are a bigot. You are discriminating against trans women who haven't transitioned. So that is an actual argument within that movement. So do you think there's going to be a breakup of the LGBT where the lesbians and the homosexuals perhaps remove themselves from the rest of the alphabet group? Yeah,
that's another similarity that we saw with Blexit, with the Black community leaving, the progressive, Democratic Party left, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. It's the lesbian and gay, and even some transsexuals and some bisexuals. There's a movement called the Walk Away movement in the States by this guy named Brandon Straka. Yes. And it's about, it's the same exact thing. We're sick and tired of all these new genders and all these things that we didn't agree to stand behind. Like, we have our rights. We fought for our rights. We have them. And now I think all these other organizations, the Human Rights Campaign, all the, the Trevor Project, they're all fighting for things just to fight for things so they can continue to exist as organizations, it seems like. They're making up new problems, and we didn't sign up for that.
James.
Gina, I want to ask you a question about the recent protests and unrest we've seen in the United States. Can you tell me, what do you reckon, with November coming up, what do you expect the unrest and especially the destruction of many Black neighborhoods in American cities is going to have on the African-American vote for Trump coming up in November?
That's a tough one. I think, in one sense, President Trump allowing or, not doing anything to really stop all of this madness and chaos in these Democratic-run cities, in a way, it has really exposed how crazy the progressive left is, and how really, when it comes down to it, they stand for chaos and destruction. And in a way, I think it sort of exposed them, and it sort of reminded everyone that at the end of the day, they don't want to preserve the ideals of America. They want to completely dismantle what our country stands for. They want to dismantle our culture. They want to dismantle our entire economic system. And so I think watching these violent riots and these crazy protests and the burning of buildings and ruining so many Black lives, I think in a way it has exposed more of how crazy the progressive left has gotten. So, but then again, I don't know. I know that there are some people who have been really a bit disappointed with President Trump not really stepping in and taking more of a firm law and order stance. But I truly think at the end of the day, I think this is going to be in President Trump's favor. I think people are really understanding that he stands for law and order, and he wants to preserve America, and he wants to provide more opportunities for Black America. He wants, he's the first president in modern history to sign off on criminal justice reform. Even President Obama didn't do that. So I think at the end of the day, it's really going to favor President Trump and expose just how insane the progressive left has gone.
Gina Florio and Ariel Scarcella, thanks to both of you so much for coming on. Gina, I urge people to go on to the Blexit, look up the Blexit Foundation, to go online, donate. It's a fantastic organisation, so I urge Australians to look at it and get involved. I love your summation in the conclusion, the comparison between Blexit and Black Lives Matter. Your conclusion is that for Blexit, all Black lives matter, but for Black Lives Matter, only some Black Lives Matter. Terrific conclusion. Gina Florio and Ariel Scarcella, thanks both so much for coming on Outsiders, and we'll chat to you again soon, I hope.
Thank
Bye.
you.